Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council meeting of Monday, May 16th, 2022 to order. If I can have our Assistant City Clerk call the roll.
Mayor Flores.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Tharp.
Present.
Councilmember Noble.
Here.
Councilmember Dugo.
Here.
Councilmember Diaz.
Here.
Councilmember Busquet.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
All rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, moving on to agenda approval. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made by Councilmember Busquets, second by Councilmember Dugo. All in favor?
Aye.
Can you guys hear me? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so that motion carries 5-0. Comments from the public for agenda items only. Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda items, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Daniel Seda. I live at 3578 Harwich Court. First thing I want to do is thank the whole board for helping us get through the things that we needed to get done on Chickasaw Road and on Harwich Court. I want to thank from the girl that works up front to connect me to the people that I needed to talk to today to make this happen. To the guys that work on the field, you know, that they don't get that much credit. They do work hard, and they do take care of our parks and everything else within Green Acres. And I just, again, want to thank everyone for getting everything through and getting these little projects going. I've been waiting a long time, so Mr. Mayor, you're the leader of this group, and I want to thank you myself personally. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay? That's all I have to say.
Daniel, I do want to say this. It's encouraging for you to come before us and bring up an issue. I think this happened maybe over 2 years ago where you came to the meetings and you brought up an issue. And I think this board here made a commitment to you that we were going to address that issue, and I think we've stood by our word. So I'm extremely proud of our board, our city, everybody that you think. We're extremely proud that we're able to work for our residents. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak on agenda items only? All right, seeing none, moving on to special business. Our first item tonight is supposed to be our legislative update from the Honorable State Representative David Silvers. I don't see him, so if he's maybe running a little bit late, I'll add him to the agenda a little bit later. So we're going to move on to our second special business item, which is it's a proclamation. If I can have our Assistant City Clerk please read the proclamation for National Gun Violence Awareness.
Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Green Acres proclaiming June 3rd, 2022 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. By wearing orange on June 3rd, 2022, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. Thank you.
Anyone wishing to come, please come down. So in honor of National Gun Violence Awareness Day, I want to present you with this proclamation. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. My name is Kathy DiPolito. I'm a volunteer with the Palm Beach County chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. For those who are not familiar with our organization, we're the largest grassroots gun violence prevention organization in the United States, focused on public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. We lobby to pass stronger gun laws and work to close the loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our families. When we started this work 4 years ago, approximately 92 Americans were killed each day due to gun violence. That number in 4 years has gone from 92 up to 110 per day. We also work in our own local communities with the business leaders to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. We know that gun violence is preventable, and we're committed to doing what it takes to keep families safe. Moms Demand Action has established a volunteer chapter in every state of the country and Washington, D.C., and is part of the Everytown for Gun Safety, the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country with more than 8 million supporters. On behalf of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, I'd like to thank you for this important proclamation declaring the first day of June National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Green Acres. We can all agree that gun violence has become an epidemic and hits too close to home in this community, where just 2 weeks ago, a juvenile was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting on Fleming Avenue, right here in Green Acres. The Wear Orange campaign, part of the National Gun Violence Awareness Day, is a celebration of life and a call to action to help save lives. Orange symbolizes the value of human life and reminds us that we are united by our shared hope that we can, by working together, create a safer country for all Americans. Thank you once again to the City of Green Acres for your show of support. We encourage you to wear orange on June 3rd and speak to your neighbors about how we can work together to prevent gun violence. And you can learn more at wearorange.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you for what what your group does for our community. I know that you guys are dedicated to making a difference, and thank you for coming back. So,
thank you. We really
pleasure.
Appreciate this very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. So our next presentation, we are presenting a hardworking individual here at the city, the one that keeps sort of the lights on in the buildings. But someone that I know works extremely hard, has made a difference since I started working with you, Terry. It's been great. So I let the cat out of the bag, but today we're going to present Terry Behringer with the Government Finance Officer Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So Terry, please come up, and I know that Andrea has a few words that she would like to share.
Well, before I make my comments, Mayor, since you offered a little bit of comments, I have told many people this, and it is the absolute truth. I would let Terry take all $49 million of our budget home with her because I trust her that completely and implicitly with our budget. So on behalf of the mayor and the city council, I wanted to recognize our finance staff for being awarded the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from Government Finance Officers Association for the current fiscal year. This award is the highest form of recognition in government budgeting. Its attainment represents a significant achievement by the city and the finance department. The award reflects the commitment of the city and staff to meeting the highest principles of government budgeting. Specifically, I want to thank our Director of Finance, Terry Behringer, and our Budget and Fixed Asset Coordinator, Ruth Umholtz, for all the time and effort they put into creating a budget worthy of this recognition. Thank you very much, both of you.
Good job, ladies.
All right. We're moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
All right, I have a motion made by Councilmember Diaz, second by Councilmember Busquet. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on to a regular agenda. Our first item is public hearing for ordinance 2022-09, second reading. If I can have our assistant city clerk, please read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance 2022-09, second reading, amending the Code of Ordinance as Chapter 5, Fire Prevention and Protection by adding Section 5-11, Public Safety Access to Gated Communities, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinance, severability, inclusion in the code, and an effective date.
All right, I have a different name down here, but I see we have Chief presenting.
Mayor Flores, Deputy Mayor Tharp, and City Council. This is the second reading of the, if you recall, the presentation on the first reading was about click to enter. It is a frequency-based gate system that the fire trucks and the law enforcement vehicles use their radios instead of multiple clickers inside of our vehicle. We have some RFID tags from some of the communities around, and we also have keys. And all of those things need to be constantly updated. They do cause a delay when we are entering a gated community, and this system solves all of that. It is being installed all around the country. Many states and many cities are mandating the installation of this device. It is the most common device, and the nearest city to us to have mandated like we are is Palm Beach Gardens, and they've seen a huge success. They've seen a decrease in their response times into the communities, and we do understand there's a small cost for this device and could be a burden to the HOAs, and that is why we've decided to allow them up to 2 years with a 1-year extension at your request. I have a few other facts. We believe that the Pine Lake community is the smallest gated community in Green Acres. It has about 67 units in it. If you look at the cost, the average cost of this device is around $1,200. That would be $18 per household, one-time fee, and then they would never see a fee for that again. We believe that would be pretty. If you've ever called 911 and that 4 to 6 minutes seems like 40 minutes, this device can take quite a few seconds off that response time. A relatively larger neighborhood at the north end of our city, such as Dillman Farms, with 137 units, that cost would be around $8.75 if they were to assess it. And staff is recommending that you approve the public hearing ordinance 2022-09 on second reading.
Do you have any comments or questions from the council?
I have a quick question.
Councilmember Diaz.
This sort of item doesn't require any sort of public notification to the HOAs, correct?
We don't believe so, but we also understand that we are going to go out, and our fire inspector and our fire marshal will be going to the HOAs and be speaking to them. They often do about other issues. They're going to educate the public on the device, and because we're giving them 2 years with an option to extend for another year, we believe that's sufficient notice.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-09 on second reading.
All right, this is public hearing, so my apologies. I'd like to open public hearing for ordinance 2022-09. Anyone wishes to speak in favor of the ordinance, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the ordinance, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. I have a motion made by Councilmember Busquet.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dugo. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. All right. Ordinance 2022-12, first reading. If I can have our Assistant City Clerk please read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance 2022-12, first reading, amending Chapter 2, Article 2 to create a new Section 2-29 to be entitled Appointment Process for Deputy Mayor, to set forth the process for the appointment of the Deputy Mayor, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinance, severability, inclusion in the code, and effective date.
All right, and we have our city manager, Andrew McHugh, presenting.
Thank you, Mayor. Article 2, Section 2 of the city's charter requires that the city council designate one of its members as deputy mayor. Council Policy 12, which was adopted in 1997, outlined a process for the appointment, but it was rescinded in 2016. Outside of the charter requirements, the city has no other policies or guidelines in place that provide a process for the appointment of deputy mayor. At the April 18th council meeting, the council directed staff to prepare an ordinance outlining a process that mirrors the recommendations made by the Charter Review Committee. The process for appointment of deputy mayor is being recommended as follows. Beginning with the first meeting in April of 2023, the appointment of deputy mayor shall rotate annually among the council members with the initial appointment to council seat 1. Any council member in his or her first term will defer the appointment as deputy mayor for a 1-year period, at which point the appointment will be assigned to the next sequential council seat, and the deferring council member shall serve the subsequent year. Should any council member decline the appointment will go to the next sequential council seat, and the deferring council member will not be appointed until the rotation returns to his or her seat. Should the council member serving as deputy mayor vacate his or her council seat for any reason, the deputy mayor appointment will rotate to the next sequential council seat, and the incumbent therein shall complete the unexpired term followed by his or her own term as deputy mayor. In the event the deputy mayor is serving as mayor pro tem pursuant to Article 2, Section 3 of the Charter, the deputy mayor's position will not rotate until a new mayor is elected. Only one thing I did want to add in having some conversations with our city attorney. Currently, the District 1 council member is serving as deputy mayor. Prior to second reading, we could add a provision that provides for the council member that is currently serving as deputy mayor, which would cause then for the 2023 year for it to start at District 2 rather than District 1, because the current council member for District 1 is currently serving as deputy mayor. So if it pleases the council, we can add that prior to bringing it back for second reading. There is minimal cost associated with the deputy mayor appointment, and our city attorney has reviewed all the supporting documents for legal sufficiency and compliance. Staff is recommending approval of Ordinance 2022-12 on first reading.
All right, are there any comments or questions from the council?
Yes.
Councilmember Bousquet.
Does that include the statement that you just made, the way that it's reading?
No, I think that if anything, when the council makes a motion to approve on first reading, just providing that direction to also add that additional clause that provides for the District 1 council member currently serving as deputy mayor. So in fiscal year 2023, the rotation would begin at District 2.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, do I have a motion?
I have a motion to approve Ordinance 2022-12, and additionally adding the clause regarding our current District 1 serving.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the council? All right, I have a motion made by Councilmember Dugo, seconded by Councilmember Noble. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on to Ordinance 2022-13, first reading. If I can have our Assistant City Clerk please read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance 2022-13, first reading, amending Article 5, Section 2-146 of the Green Acres City Code entitled Voting Districts by redefining the geographic boundaries for the 5 established voting districts, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinance, severability, inclusion in the code, and an effective date.
Thank you, and we have City Manager Andrew McHugh presenting.
I am actually going to defer to James Gamick, Clark, who's the Senior Instructor of Geosciences Department for FAU. He will be presenting to the Mayor and Council on FAU's behalf.
Good evening, everybody. Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Thank you very much for having me back. My name is James Gamma Clark, and as Andrea was saying, I am a senior instructor at the Department of Geosciences at Florida Atlantic University, and I'm here this evening to review with you again the alternatives that we prepared for you for your election districts. A brief agenda for this evening. I'll review the members of the team that worked on this project with myself. We'll go over the timeline that got us here this evening. We'll talk about the data that was used as part of this project and the parameters that we used for creating your various districts under the parameters that we prepared for you. We'll then talk about your existing districts and how those align with both the 2020 U.S. Census data as well as the January 2023 projection that we prepared for you. We'll then talk about the alternative that was selected by this council. Initially, alternative 1 was identified as the preferred alternative, but then we got direction from the council to make a small tweak, and that ended up being alternative 1B. We'll discuss that this evening. And then, of course, we'll finish up with a summary. So, in addition to myself, other members of this team included Dr. Ron Schultz, who, like myself, was a member of the Department of Geosciences. Also on our team was Dr. Brasser of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, in addition to Michael Stamm, also of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. So we began this project back in October of last year when we had an initial kickoff meeting with your staff. We followed that up with an initial report. We were asked to prepare this analysis into 2 parts. So the first part looked at your existing districts and sought to see if population equity was in place. We determined that that was not the case, and so we were asked to come back and prepare a second report, which we delivered on January 28th of this year, which presented to you 5 different alternatives. You'll recall in late March I was here where we had a discussion about all of the various alternatives. And again, at that meeting, alternative 1 was selected by the council. However, for contiguity reasons, the River Bridge Plaza was moved in its entirety into District 4. We were notified that about a week later, there was some discussion on that issue at the evening, and then the following week, the council talks about the issue further, and we were asked to see if we could move at least the majority of River Bridge Plaza back. And we did that, with the exception of 3 out parcels that were at the northeastern corner of that particular plaza. And so that was a compromise that works. It provides the necessary contiguity for the particular districts. And of course, being a shopping plaza, it didn't impact any residents whatsoever. So it had no impact upon the population equity. So on April 21st, we submitted an amendment with that revised map, alternative 1B. And of course, that brings us to this evening, where hopefully we'll have our first reading. And then on June 6th, in a couple of weeks, we'll come back, have our second reading, and hopefully adoption. And then you'll be able to submit your new maps to the Supervisor of Elections. So just to recap, the data that we used in this project is the U.S. Census Bureau's 2020 Census Redistricting Summary File. Again, this is the same data set that's used by all levels of government across the country as they go through the redistricting effort. The only distinction is that when we work at the municipal level, we have to use the smallest enumeration unit possible, which is the U.S. Census block, and that provides us the spatial resolution that we need to carve up a relatively small geographic area like a municipality. So these census blocks are all aggregated together to produce your voting districts. We also worked with housing data provided to us by city staff. And the reason that we do this, of course, is that you don't want to go through the expense and effort of going through the redistricting process, only to find that very quickly upon adoption that your districts are going to fall out of alignment, no longer have the population equity that would be fair to the residents of your city. And so that's the reason we were asked to do the population projection, which of course we did. We use the following redistricting parameters. The first is reasonable population equity. Again, the idea for the residents is that each resident of the city of Green Acres deserves equal representation. So to achieve equal representation, every district should have as close to average population, as close to the average population as possible. Legal precedent suggests that there be a maximum 10% overall deviation from the ideal size or the average population across the district. So that's the guiding rule that we always work on when we go through these redistricting projects. We also seek geographic contiguity and appropriate compactness where possible. And to that end, we follow major natural and man-made boundaries. And of course, we also seek to respect the integrity of communities of interest and neighborhoods where possible. That said, always, 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 population equality is the primary driving factor. Again, it's about equal representation for your residents. Nevertheless, the others are significant in guiding our decisions towards reaching this reasonable population value. So here we see a map of your existing districts. These district boundaries have been in place for over 20 years from what I understand. And after we did our analysis, it was immediately clear that this population equity had fallen out of balance. So looking at the 2020 data, we see that the city of Green Acres population was 43,990. If we divide that by 5, that gives us an average number of 8,798. When we add in the population projection that we did for you, we found that number by January of next year would be expected to be 44,999. If we divide that by 5, we get out with some rounding error, 9,000 people. So that's the magic number that we're looking for, right? We're trying to make sure that each of your election districts has as close to 9,000 people as we can possibly make it. So, as I mentioned, the current districts are heavily unbalanced. They have a total deviation of 69.98% between all 5 districts. And they have a spread, that is the difference between the average for the largest district and the smallest district, of 56.85%. So both of these values way exceed the maximum 10% threshold that we discussed previously. So when we submitted our initial report, that was why we recommended you move ahead with the redistricting process. You directed us to do that, and that led to the various alternatives. So ultimately, we prepared 6 alternatives for you, the 5 in the initial report and then the tweak that we presented in our amendment. All met standard districting guidelines. They represented alternative ways to better balance district populations and keep with the intent of the other identified guidelines. The overall pattern of boundary changes needs to reduce the population of District 1 and expand that of District 2. And of course, this necessitated an adjustment of the geographic boundaries where District 1 had to contract in size while District 2 needed to add territory. We also sought improved spatial compactness and contiguity. So alternative 1B is that tweak that I mentioned. As we saw in all of the alternatives, we had to work towards the middle. So we started at the northern and southern extremities of the city, given the kind of irregular shape, and then work towards the middle. It's at the middle of the city where the boundaries meet one another, where we have the flexibility to move boundaries around. So again, this was the case in all of the alternatives presented. And they effectively broke down into different permutations what we should do with the northern part of the city and the southern part of the city, where we used 10th Avenue North as the demarcation line between those two halves. So alternative 1B provided improved overall population balance, which of course was our first criterion, and improved spatial compactness and contiguity, which was our second criterion. Here we see a map that shows all of the various changes that needed to take place to go from your existing district to those of alternative 1B. And here we see the same map, but without that red hatching. This is a map that depicts what your boundaries would look like if you do indeed move forward with alternative 1B this evening. You can see it's exactly the same as the alternative 1 that we discussed when we were back here in March. The only distinction is that the majority of River Bridge Plaza is now in District 3, with those three small plazas, those three parcels and the northeastern corner staying in District 4 as they were in Alternative 1. So overall deviation is much improved under Alternative 1B. The total deviation fell from 69.98% down to 1.75%, while the mean deviation fell from 14% all the way down to 0.35%. So both of these statistics are tied for the lowest deviations of all the 6 alternatives that we presented to you in our report and our amendment. The spread fell all the way down from 56.85% down to 1.26%. So all the alternatives that we presented to you dramatically improved the population balance among the 5 districts and resolved the contiguity issues that we identified in our initial report. All are well below the 10% deviation threshold, offering excellent population equity for your constituents. I've highlighted on this table Alternative 1B, which was your identified preferred alternative. And you can see here that it, again, has excellent statistics, as do the other 5 alternatives. They really were pretty much pick 'em in terms of the quantifiable numbers, but for various reasons you identified Alternative 1 and then subsequently 1B as your preferred alternative. And that's it, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any comments or questions? Councilmember Noble.
You've done a lot of work, and obviously it was necessary over the years, but I go back to the premise of why we're doing this. You've reduced each district so that you have equity in terms of population.
Correct.
But within the district, there's no need to have that group to have a voice, which would be one of the reasons you would put them all together. Since everyone votes in our elections, and we vote for the persons representing the district. What it gets down to is, why do we have districts? District is primary, unless someone else can come up with another comment. The district primarily is to develop candidates to run for that district. You have to live in that district to run for that district. And that seems to be the only purpose of having districts. Anything else in terms of equity, everyone votes in the same elections, and everyone votes for all the candidates of all the districts. So that's my one point. The other point I want to bring out is I'm in District 2, and it's in the middle. And you have District 1, and you have the 2 end districts. That's where the growth is going to be. This city, as I pointed out once before, is going to grow along Jog Road as properties become adjacent to the city. This is where the growth will be. And so tell me what you have planned as that gets out of balance. How will we handle that, the growth from those 2 ends, whereas in my case, my district has no growth potential at all?
Indeed. Thank you very much. So, Councilman, what I would suggest is, of course, you would normally refer to the language of your city charter as to how to deal with a situation like that. I think there was a comment made the last time I was here in March that potentially, it wasn't made by me, it was made by one of the members of your council, that maybe in a future charter review you'd want to add some language to the charter that deals with redistricting. That would certainly be something that we would recommend. Some city charters will have very specific language about how to handle redistricting. Some simply state that, hey, every 10 years after the decennial census, please engage in this process. Other city charters will state, hey, every 10 years, or if it's demonstrated that the districts have fallen out of alignment, that you should engage in redistricting at that time. So as to how to deal with that future growth, if you did have a large project that went in and you wanted to address the question of population equity, it seems you'd have 2 options. You could either invite us back after the next, hopefully you'd invite us back. Certainly invite somebody back or even engage in the process yourself, although I would say it's always advisable to have an independent consultant do this for you. But you could either engage in that process again following the next decennial census in 2030. You'd have to wait for the data to come out, so it would actually be 2031. Or if the project was so large that you knew the population equity had been blown out of the water, that you could invite us back sooner, and then we could engage, or somebody else, engage in the process again and create new districts at that time.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Councilmember Dugo.
Thank you very much for bringing back Alternative 1B.
A pleasure.
And thank you for my council for being open-minded. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number, ordinance number 2022-13 on first reading.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Bousquet, second by Councilmember Dugo. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to ordinance 2022-16's first reading. If I can have our assistant city clerk please read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance 2022-16, first reading, amending Chapter 16, Article 4, Supplemental District Regulations, amending Division 3, Public Places, to add Subdivision 2, Art and Public Places, creating a 1% Art and Public Places program for city beautification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinance, providing for severability, providing for inclusion in code, and providing for an effective date.
And tonight we have Director of Development and Neighborhood Services, Kara Irwin Ferris, presenting.
Good evening. Let me pull up my presentation. Before you tonight is ETA 2107 relative to the Art and Public Places Ordinance to develop an art public fee for art and public places. This is Ordinance 2022-16 and first reading tonight. The purpose of providing an art and public places program to the city is to enhance our community vibrancy, promote creativity, enhance our public spaces, and provide the public with more opportunities to experience public art. This helps us move forward in providing more opportunities for public art within our city. We've already, as you'll see through the presentation, I've tried to include some of the projects we've already had in the city. I did do a workshop with you previously, so I'm going to go through this. It matches exactly what I showed you in the previous workshop. For this, we're actually opening up under supplemental regulations. We had previously adopted a public places division, Division 3. We had subdivision 1, which was for monuments within the city locations. And we are adding subdivision 2 for the art and public places. We're providing a purpose. We're establishing a public art fee. And then we're providing also the art and public places requirements. The requirement for the application, violation, requirements for the art fee in lieu. So if an applicant would like to put art on their site or provide the fund, the opportunity is there for them to do that. And then providing for maintenance and definitions for the program. So the requirement, the overall is we're doing a $250,000 cumulative development costs for projects. Most of we are built out, so most projects are going to be smaller. So we're setting that number smaller than most of other cities. Palm Beach Gardens has $1 million cap. West Palm Beach has a $500,000 cap. We're in line with developments like, or cities like Boynton Beach, which have lower cap to provide for the requirement. We are proposing 1% of the construction costs to go to the art fund. 100% for public art, or if the applicant wants to provide it on site, they have to provide 30% to our fund, and they can do 70% for the private art on the development site. The fund can be used for art purchases for the city, and also it will also be used to fund maintenance for projects, and you'll look at that in increments. Every project, every art project will have to have a maintenance plan, and then those maintenance plans will be paid for out of these funds. Sometimes they use different types of metals or different types of materials that need specific types of maintenance, so all of that is provided for within the ordinance. We'll also look at standards for the art, how it's integrated into the site, how it's supported on the site, lighting for the art, as well as putting recommendation or requirements that it can't be removed down the line by a property. The art projects will be evaluated and reviewed by the DRC, and then they will be approved by City Council before they can be placed on the site. The current iteration does not have for a selection committee or an art and public places committee. We've chosen to do a more streamlined process. As you get further on through this process and get some money into the fund, you may want to consider creating a committee for the selection of public art, which you can do. But currently for this process, we're just utilizing staff to approve off-site private art on private property. So that's how that process will go. You'll still have full approval of the public art, of course. We also have requirements for what can be included for artwork: sculpture, murals, fiber works, furnishings, culturally significant elements, or temporary artworks or installations. You can provide money for educational, whether it's at the community center or at City Hall. You can, bring in, rotating art pieces for our residents to see, or the residents or the children over at the community center. It's up to you. These are just different types of artwork that is allowed within the program. What artwork may not include: we don't allow for mass-produced or standard manufactured art pieces, things that you can get in a catalog, reproductions of original artwork, decorative, ornamental, architecture, or functional elements of the architecture or landscape design. That's not what is considered art if they're proposing it on their site. And then also commercial expressions. If they do a huge logo out in front of their property, that's a commercial message. It's not considered art. The proposed amendments are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and will further the purposes of the city's zoning code regulation and other city codes. The ordinance before you tonight puts in place the program, and will start from this point, from adoption. Projects coming through will have to provide their fees towards the art and public places fee. Staff does recommend approval of the proposed ordinance 2022-16.
All right, are there any comments or questions from the council?
I move approval of the ordinance.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Noble.
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. There are comments or questions? Councilmember Diaz.
As far as the choice to not have an AIPP committee now, I just know, we all know what we know. We all have our wheelhouses. And I just feel like perhaps we should reconsider, I just want to put this out there, having some persons that have the arts background, whether it's maybe local, educators, or we partner with maybe Armory Art or some of the other municipalities that can give us ideas of what they've done. Art's very subjective, and we know that. But I just wanted to kind of question why we've moved forward with staff versus having a committee in place now.
So the provisions we provided are basic. Are you an artist? Because art is so subjective. Are you an artist? Is this a piece of art? Meaning, does it meet our definition of art? And are you meeting our code? You're right. Eventually, especially when you're going out for a call to artists, you're probably going to want to have a selection committee that has that kind of knowledge. Currently, we've been having, quite honestly, a hard time manning our boards or putting people on our boards here in the city for us, especially when you start to provide requirements that are more defined, like someone who has an art background or someone who is an art educator. It's something that I think eventually you'll get to, and as people maybe reach out to us through this process, keep them in mind, because you can cultivate those relationships and pull people in. It's something we can put into place anytime. But to start this process, we're trying to start it so it can work. But I do think eventually you'll probably get to that point where you'll create a selection committee.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess I do like that too, Councilmember Diaz, having a group of selected individuals to choose. I also understand that we've had some issues in the past, but it would be nice if each one of us would be able to appoint someone in the near future, so that we give our community some onus on the art that we're looking to bring to the city. So that's all my comments. Any other comments? Seeing none. All right. I know I have a motion. I can't remember. It was Councilmember Noble, second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That motion carries 5-0. All right. The last item on our regular agenda is Resolution 2022-27. If I can have our Assistant City Clerk please read the resolution by title.
Resolution 2022-27, approving the purchase of land, providing for authorization for city staff to execute all closing documents and an effective date.
And we have City Manager McHugh presenting.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 2022-27 regarding the acquisition of property is really as a result of just the growth that the city has seen over the last 20 years, resulting in a need to expand services to maintain expected levels of service. Based on a review of areas within the city with available land and target locations where expanded city services are most needed, the city's made an offer to acquire 2 vacant parcels at 553 and 557 Jackson Avenue. The sale price for the 2 parcels is $425,000. The appraised value of the 2 parcels is $490,000. The contract of sale has been reviewed by the city attorney for legal sufficiency and compliance. Staff is recommending that the City Council approve the acquisition of property and authorize appropriate city staff to execute all closing documents.
All right. Are there any comments or questions from the council? Councilmember Noble.
I'm sure we're using some of the money that was given to the city. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, we're using. We're going to be using American Rescue Plan dollars towards this.
Will there be anything left over?
Oh yes, it's $20 million in American Rescue Plan. So we will be using portions, but then the dollars are also allocated for the construction of projects associated with, the expansion of services.
For some time, many years ago, most people weren't here at the time, I had suggested that we acquire the 2 pieces of property that are in 10th Avenue that are on the border of our park. There are 2 buildings there. With the acquisition of those properties, we would have a complete block, with the exception of the 3 residential homes that still would be on Swain. Do we picture where I'm talking about?
You're talking about the corner of Swain and 10th?
That's right, Swain and 10th there. And if you, on 10th Avenue, there are 2 buildings there.
Correct. There's actually a warehouse, there's a professional office building, then there are also the 2 homes that are next to the parks, and those are things that we are looking at. We're just not in a position just yet, whether it's any support from the current owners or anything like that. We're not in a position yet, but they are something that's on our radar.
Yes. I think at one time we somewhat investigated whether those properties were available for sale. I don't know whether Michelle Thompson had gotten involved in that or not.
There was a period of time when there was work being when there were changes being made to the footprint of the community center and work was being done there. I believe there was some discussions to potentially try and acquire properties. I don't know that there was interest at that time based on whatever the pricing was, or just the owners of the properties were not interested at the time.
Well, just to sum up what I'm saying is certainly if we have funds available and if it makes sense, certainly inquiring that entire block for Green Acres, I think it would be beneficial to the city. So I would suggest that we look at that again.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-27.
Second.
All right, have a motion made by Councilmember Bousquet, second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on to discussion items. There are none tonight, so we are moving on to comments from the public on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. All right. That's not for public comment?
Hello.
I'd like to find a friend.
All right, moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly tonight, I just wanted to remind everyone that, you know, you read a lot in the headlines about mental health awareness and just everything that's going on. The city is going to be hosting a community conversation on the 18th regarding suicide prevention. If you have not had an opportunity to attend one of our community conversations, they are wonderful, and they provide as a great resource to everyone that attends. We do get a lot of students that attend, so we're very grateful that they take the time to attend as well. It will be on the 18th this week. And again, the topic is suicide prevention from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the community center. And the only other thing I have to add is that at the next council meeting, we will begin our discussions related to the fiscal year 23 budget, and we will be talking about capital improvement projects. That is it.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for the city manager? Seeing none. All right. Thank you. And then we have our city attorney's report. Christy?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report tonight.
Thank you. All right, and moving on to the mayor and city council's report. I believe I started to my left last time, so I'm starting tonight with Deputy Mayor Tharp.
No report.
Councilmember Noble.
Not a report, but a question as to the status of an issue. When there was this ill-fated shooting of a young man the other day, last week, the media, a particular TV channel, insisted on talking to us on the council, came to my door, knocking on my door, wanted my comments. And I directed them to Austin, and I wanted to make sure if that's going to be the policy. Is that the way we're going to handle this so that we don't get cross on the comments?
Correct. In situations such as that one, you know, unfortunately, for us, PBSO should be the point of contact. I think if anything routes through our public information officer, then everything would be routed to PBSO. But it's an active investigation. Would be premature for us to make any comment or provide any input on the circumstances surrounding it. So in situations like that, that is correct. You can defer people to our public information officer, who will in turn refer them to PBSO, who's handling those types of investigations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
All right, Councilmember Dugo.
Just a quick thank you. I had to PBSO, I had the honor of being invited to a Red Flags for Parents, and it was very informative, and it was a great job, and it just shows how PBSO really cares and takes that extra step. So thank you, PBSO. And say a prayer for people in Buffalo today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Diaz.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind it, we are in graduation season, and I wanted to thank Ms. Thompson once again, and I wanted to thank Mr. Chuck Shaw, who are assisting us in delivering the scholarship level letters to our 6 recipients, which hopefully you'll all be able to meet them next meeting. So thank you.
And Councilmember Bousquet.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, and I do spot State
David.
Representative outside. Silvers, he's on the phone, so I am going to give my report briefly, and then hopefully we'll get the legislative update from Representative Silvers when he finishes. So from my point, I just want to let you guys know I am starting up basketball with the mayor. I am inviting some of the high schools in the nearby area. I think it's a great way for me to learn about what's going on in our community. Also, hopefully show them a good role model. It's also a great place where we can bond. And so I know our team has been sort of working on that. Michelle has been coordinating with the local high schools, and then I know Austin, they've been putting it together. But you guys are all more than welcome to come out. I believe the dates will be advertised, and the idea is that our youth comes out. They hang out with me for probably an hour. I don't know that I can go much more than that nowadays. But it's just I think a good venue for them to see a positive role model, see our facilities. They haven't been to our facilities. I know PBSO is probably going to be there, our new community person probably, and I think it'll be a nice little thing for us to do. I'm also going to try to invite some guests to come by and drop by. I'll give them the dates, so hopefully we'll get some nice surprises for them. I see Representative Silvers is here. Representative Silvers, would you still like to do the legislative update? We're wrapping up the meeting. No?
Well, I got to talk to my staff about that. I sincerely apologize. Is this on?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It is? Okay, sorry. Well, for those in the audience, I'm David Silvers. I'm the state representative for a portion of Green Acres, and I'm sincerely sorry. I was told it was 7. I was actually waiting in my car for a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Sorry about that. I have a 3-week-old daughter, so maybe my lack of sleep, so I apologize. I'll be very quick with my legislative update. I'm not sure if you've already had legislative updates from other state reps and state senators in the area, but I'll be very quick. This past budget was a record budget with a $10.5 billion increase, a 15.44% increase from last year's record budget. We had a nice pay raise for our state employees, including a $15 per hour state employee pay with a targeted pay incentives. And this is I think everybody in this room is going to appreciate this, a $200 million gas tax holiday delayed until the month before the election, so that'll be in the month of October. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better on the pocketbook and the wallet. This past session we had some controversial bills that I'm sure that have received some widely around the country some attention. HB 1557, Parental Rights in Education, commonly known as the Don't Say Gay bill, and HB 1467, K through 12 education. And that's a bill that allows a parent to challenge certain books in the classroom environment. So I don't know if you've heard of that piece of legislation, but unfortunately it passed and signed into law. But it wasn't all controversial, and unfortunately the national media doesn't pick up on this piece of legislation that I'm quite proud that received bipartisan support. And that's HB 577, Tenant Safety. Now, as a father of a newborn daughter, I take this bill very to heart. And this bill is commonly known as Maya's Law. I'm going to read to you a quick little synopsis of who Maya was. On September 24th, 2021, Maya Marcano, a student at UCF, went missing from her apartment in Orlando and was later found dead. A police investigation indicated that Marcano was taken from her apartment by a maintenance worker that worked at the complex, and he used a master key to enter her apartment. He was later found dead from an apparent suicide once her body was found. Now, before this piece of legislation, if you lived in an apartment complex, people that worked in those complexes could have access to master keys. And there wouldn't, sorry, on my phone, there wouldn't be a background check on any of those individuals. This requires that background check. It also requires the time period in which a landlord can enter a premises from 12 hours to 24 hours. It was kind of astonishing that this piece of legislation was needed. It was definitely needed. And what's even scarier is that this same exact thing happened during session this year, 2022. To give you an idea just how important this piece of legislation is. So I wish the media would pay attention to this piece of legislation, and hopefully around the country. If this isn't legislation around the nation, this should be. It could save people's lives. And then there was another piece of legislation that I filed, HB 375, Structural Engineering Recognition Program for Professional Engineers. This piece of legislation was in response to Surfside. It would establish a structural engineering recognition program for professional engineers, and this program recognizes professional engineers who specialize in structural engineering and have gone above and beyond the required minimum professional engineering licensing standards. And the specific requirements are to be determined by the Board of Professional Engineers. The recognition by the board is not required to practice engineering, structural engineering, but it allows engineers who have received this recognition. They can use it in marketing and advertising their services. So it looks so you can advertise yourself as going beyond what any other structural engineer would go through with regard to your education and what exams you've passed. So it would hopefully further prevent another tragedy. As for appropriations, this is the first year in 6 years that I've been in the legislature. Every single one of my appropriations was funded, which was nice. Usually it's 1, 2, or 3, but I got all 6. It was great, and I'm proud to say that Green Acres was one of them. It was $150,000 for the fire station headquarter renovation. Look forward to that renovation soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. And that's it. So I apologize for the mix-up on the time. I thought it was a little odd that you started at 7. I'm like, wow, I guess everybody's coming after dinner. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any comments or questions from the council? Representative Silvers, I believe that you guys have a special session coming up.
Yes, on insurance.
Can you give us a little update on what you guys are hearing or what to expect from this special session and how that may affect our residents?
Well, I don't know if we're going to get the changes that we need. There's a lot of people out there that are losing insurance completely, and on top of having their insurance double, triple, and quadruple on their premiums. I had Ann Gannon, our tax collector, called me up about a few weeks ago and said her insurance company just dropped her. Didn't even give her an opportunity to get another policy. So it's affecting everybody, and I want to see substantive legislation pass. Here's the problem. If we don't put enough money into the CAT fund to make sure that we're covered with a catastrophic storm, it's going to go for naught. And that's what's really disappointing. It's going to take several $1 billion. Whether or not the House is willing to put that much money in, we'll see. But like I said, we had over $110 billion budget this past session. That's 2% if it was $2 billion if you want to put into that fund. Also, there's certain policies in other states that have worked. We're going to see if maybe there'll be leadership will be open to listening to those policies. But there are certain elements and there are certain personalities in the legislature that may not be open to that. Right. But I want to see some changes soon.
Thank you. I know the home insurance is a big deal, and we're all sort of waiting to see what happens. So thank you for your leadership on that. Are there any other comments or questions from the council? Representative Silvers, thank you for making time. I know that you're extremely busy.
Thank you.
Welcome on a new addition to your family.
Thank you.
Try to get as much sleep as you can in between.
Sleep. Drink a lot of coffee.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you again. Sorry for the mix-up.
That's fine.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I move that we adjourned.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Meeting is adjourned.
Signed documents.